Ah, silly bands, the tiny rubber bracelets that transformed into magical animals, objects, and, well, whatever this thing is. For a hot minute in the late 2000s, these stretchy little loops were the single most important thing you could have on your wrist. Not your watch, not your friendship bracelet. No, no, no. Only a giraffe shaped band would do. This is the story of how these rubbery little oddities rose to world domination only to disappear faster than your favorite lunch snack on pizza day. Like all great inventions, think sliced bread or, the fidget spinner. Silly Bands came from a spark of brilliance. Enter Robert Croak, a man who looked at ordinary rubber bands and said, "What if they were shaped like a dinosaur?" No one else was asking that question, but Croak dared to dream big. Originally used as office supplies in Japan, Croak took these boring rubber bands and added just a pinch of childhood wonder. The result? Silly Bands. Because who wants a plain circle when you could have a squishy, stretchy flamingo on your wrist? And then, boom, the chaos began. It was like the Hunger Games out there. Kids were collecting, trading, hoarding silly bands like their lives depended on it. Need lunch money? Forget cash. Trade a silly band in the shape of a unicorn and you're covered. Have an argument with your best friend? A rare glow in the dark silly band could fix that right up. You were nobody if your wrist wasn't weighed down by at least 30 silly bands at any given time. In fact, the more you had, the more you resembled a human rainbow. You weren't just wearing silly bands, you were a walking exhibit of abstract rubber art. But like any great trend, silly bands were too powerful for their own good. Soon, teachers were cracking down. "They're distracting," they said. "We can't teach with kids focusing on rubber sharks." They yelled. Schools started banning silly bands left and right. Why? Because children had stopped listening to math and were now only interested in comparing who had the coolest jellyfish shaped bracelet. Now, I don't know about you, but personally, I would have preferred learning math through silly bands. If Sarah has 5 silly bands and she trades 2 for a glow in the dark dragon, how many does she have left? Sounds like a win win to me. But, alas, the powers that be didn't agree. Rest in peace, silly bands freedom. And just as quickly as they arrived, silly bands began to disappear. Kids moved on to the next shiny distraction, probably some new app or weird dance craze. Meanwhile, silly bands sat abandoned, lost at the bottom of backpacks and under couches, destined to be rediscovered years later, like, "Oh, hey, I remember these." Turns out, people only needed so many rubber bracelets in the shape of a turtle. The market was flooded, and before you knew it, silly bands were on clearance next to expired Halloween candy. But for that brief, glorious time, they were more than just stretchy shapes, they were status symbols. We were living in a golden age of rubber based economy, people. Today, silly bands exist in that special part of your brain where nostalgia lives rent free. They're right next to your memories of Tamagotchis, blockbuster rentals, and flip phones. Sometimes they even make a comeback on social media. "Look, I still have my silly bands." Someone will post on TikTok, as if that dolphin shaped bracelet isn't now basically a tiny rubber fossil of the 2000s. Honestly, will silly bands ever make a full comeback? Who knows? If we can bring back scrunchies and flared jeans, why not glorify rubber bands in fun shapes? Stranger things have happened. At the end of the day, silly bands taught us an important lesson. Even the silliest things can have a massive impact on pop culture. They were fun, goofy, and gave us all something to collect, trade, and show off, even if the excitement was fleeting. So, here's to Silly Bands, the kings and queens of rubber based accessories. Long may they live in our childhood memories. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into the Silly Bands phenomenon, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment with your favorite shape. Mine was obviously the T Rex. Until next time, keep it silly.